Our TV6 Investigates team diving into Deere & Company's largest factory in the Quad Cities, shedding employees.
John Deere, a company that has been synonymous with American agriculture for generations, found itself at the heart of a storm when its chief executive, John May, revealed that the business would have to shut down operations in the United States. This announcement did not come lightly, nor did it exist in a vacuum. It was the culmination of a series of economic decisions and political maneuvers that reshaped the trade landscape almost overnight. The newly elected U.S. President, Donald Trump, introduced a sweeping tariff program targeting America's trade partners. The result was a cascade of retaliatory tariffs imposed by other nations, setting off a chain reaction that pushed costs beyond sustainable limits. For a company like John Deere, reliant on both global supply chains and international markets, this environment became untenable. The shutdown was not a reflection of poor management or lack of innovation, but rather the product of geopolitical trade warfare that altered the very foundation of international commerce. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. The tariffs imposed by the Trump administration were intended to prioritize domestic production and incentivize American industries to lean less on imports. The philosophy behind such a policy was rooted in the promise of economic nationalism, bringing back jobs and asserting leverage over trading partners. However, the reality of modern industrial giants like John Deere is far more complicated. The company's tractors, combines, and equipment are not built solely with American steel, nor are they exclusively sold within U.S. borders. Their construction involves intricate supply chains that stretch across continents, sourcing components from Europe, Asia, and South America. Moreover, the company depends heavily on selling machinery abroad, where global farmers view John Deere products as symbols of durability and technological superiority. When tariffs disrupted both sides of this equation, imports becoming too costly and exports priced out of reach for foreign buyers, the balance John Deere had maintained for decades collapsed. For American farmers, John Deere was more than just a brand. It was a partner in their livelihoods. Generations of agricultural workers relied on its green and yellow machines to cultivate crops, plant seeds, and harvest yields. The shutdown announcement sent shockwaves through rural communities. Farmers already dealing with rising costs for fertilizers, seeds, and transportation now faced the daunting reality that they would no longer have access to the equipment that had become central to their operations. While alternatives existed, none carried the same legacy of trust or the extensive network of support services Deere had established. For many, the closure of John Deere symbolized not only an economic blow, but also an erosion of tradition. A severing of ties to a company that had stood beside them for nearly 2 centuries. The retaliation from trade partners amplified the crisis. Nations like China, Canada, and members of the European Union imposed tariffs on American agricultural goods in direct response to the U.S. tariffs. This double-edged retaliation meant that American farmers found themselves unable to compete internationally. Soybeans, corn, and wheat, all staples of U.S. agricultural exports, saw their demand shrink dramatically overseas. For John Deere, which depended on farmers' financial stability to drive machinery sales, the implications were devastating. Farmers unwilling or unable to export crops at profitable prices tightened their budgets, cutting back on equipment purchases. The machinery yards that once buzzed with new tractor deliveries became eerily quiet, mirroring the paralysis spreading across the agricultural heartland. Beyond agriculture, John Deere's industrial equipment also played an important role in construction and forestry. Here, too, the tariffs rippled outward. Construction companies faced higher costs on imported materials like steel and aluminum, both crucial for infrastructure projects. As their budgets grew tighter, their ability to invest in heavy machinery waned. Forestry operators already grappling with global shifts in wood demand found themselves squeezed further when foreign buyers imposed tariffs on American lumber. Deere's diversified segments, once seen as pillars of stability, were all caught in the same net. The shutdown, therefore, was not confined to the farms. It was a sweeping halt that extended to multiple industries reliant on Deere's technology and machinery. The economic implications of this shutdown went far beyond John Deere itself. The company was a massive employer across the United States, with factories, research facilities, and offices scattered in numerous states. Thousands of workers suddenly faced unemployment, their livelihoods tied directly to the fate of the company. Communities that had grown around Deere's facilities experienced immediate anxiety as local economies braced for the loss of stable, high-paying jobs. The ripple effects extended to suppliers as well. Small businesses that provided Deere with components, logistics, or services were left stranded without their largest customer. What had begun as a political maneuver on a global scale translated into very real local crises, hitting towns across America where John Deere was more than just a corporate presence. It was the lifeblood. There was also the broader symbolism at play. John Deere was often portrayed as an emblem of American ingenuity and strength. Its shutdown underlined the fragility of even the most iconic companies when global trade systems are upended. For decades, globalization had allowed corporations like Deere to thrive, interweaving supply chains and reaching markets that once seemed inaccessible. The sudden reversal of this system through tariffs demonstrated how quickly interconnected economies could unravel. For business leaders and policymakers alike, the John Deere shutdown was not just an isolated event, but a stark warning of what can occur when economic nationalism clashes with global dependency. The political dimensions of the event were equally striking. Supporters of the tariff program argued that sacrifices were necessary to restore balance to American trade. Yet critics pointed to the Deere shutdown as proof that the strategy was self-defeating. Instead of strengthening U.S. industry, it weakened a cornerstone of American manufacturing. The clash of ideologies, protectionism versus globalization, was not abstract anymore. It had materialized in shuttered factories, empty showrooms, and broken contracts. For American citizens observing the fallout, it raised pressing questions about the direction of the nation's economic strategy. Within Deere's own corporate structure, the decision to shut down operations in the U.S. was agonizing but unavoidable. Costs had ballooned on multiple fronts. Imported components essential to machinery production were caught in tariff battles, making assembly lines unsustainable. Simultaneously, the diminished demand abroad eroded revenue streams that once balanced domestic pressures. John May, as CEO, faced a stark reality. Continuing operations under such conditions would not only drain financial reserves, but also risk long-term survival. The painful conclusion was to cease U.S. operations rather than attempt to weather an indefinite storm of uncertainty. The cultural impact of Deere's closure cannot be understated. For many, the company was more than a brand. It was part of the American identity. The sight of its machinery in fields and construction sites was as familiar as the American flag fluttering in small towns. The shutdown fractured this image, leaving a void where stability once resided. It also sparked conversations among consumers and workers alike about the limits of loyalty. Even the strongest heritage brands could not withstand external pressures when trade systems collapsed. The sense of vulnerability this created resonated deeply, eroding confidence not just in John Deere but in the resilience of American industry as a whole. At the global level, competitors of John Deere quickly recognized the opportunity. Manufacturers in Europe and Asia, spared from the full brunt of U.S. tariffs, moved swiftly to fill the vacuum. Farmers in Africa, South America, and parts of Asia, who once turned eagerly to Deere for reliable machines, now pivoted to European or Asian suppliers whose pricing remained competitive. These companies gained market share not because their products had suddenly improved, but because the geopolitical landscape had tilted in their favor. In this way, the tariffs intended to bolster American businesses inadvertently gifted leverage to foreign rivals. Financial markets responded predictably. Deere's stock value plummeted as investors absorbed the news. Analysts who once praised the company's global strategies scrambled to reassess its future. Pension funds, investment portfolios, and retirement accounts that held Deere shares felt the sting of lost value, extending the consequences into households far removed from farms or factories. The ripple effect of a single company's shutdown thus reverberated into financial institutions, altering balance sheets and prompting a re-evaluation of exposure to U.S. industrial stocks. The tariffs, meant to display strength, had instead introduced fragility into the financial ecosystem. Supply chains themselves underwent dramatic shifts in the wake of the tariffs. Companies across industries began rethinking their reliance on U.S.-based manufacturers. If an icon like Deere could collapse under pressure, What did that mean for smaller or less diversified businesses? The uncertainty bred hesitation, with foreign partners wary of engaging deeply with American firms lest they become collateral damage in future trade wars. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on John Deere's US shutdown decision? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.